Hi, I'm Kim McMillon, and I want to welcome you to the Northern California Book Awards Literary Series. Today's guest is a nominee in the area of translations, Sabrina Jaszi. Excuse me, Sabrina Jaszi. Sabrina is a writer and literary translator working from Uzbek, Ukrainian, and Russian based in Alameda, California. Her translations and her translation with Roman Eve, please forgive me,
Ivashkiv.
Roman. Thank you very Ivyatsky. Oh my, I was close, right? Okay, thank you. Of Andriy Sodomora's The Tears and Smiles of Things. What a beautiful name. It's published by Academic Studies Press, received the American Association for Ukrainian Studies Best Translation Prize. She is a co-founder of Turkoslavia, a collective and journal devoted to Turkic and Slavic literature in translation, and is writing a PhD dissertation on Central Asian literature at UC Berkeley. Thank you for Thank you for agreeing. I'm very excited to have you here. I find what you're doing is absolutely fascinating, just fascinating.
Thank you, Kim.
Before
It's so nice to be here with you and yeah, to have a chance to talk to you about this beautiful book and hopefully to find more readers for it among your audience.
you will, I can tell just by the way you talk about this wonderful book that it has so much heart. And so, what I'd like you to do is, can you show the picture of the book so people can see it?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely. Here's the book.
and a wonderful title. And please, please, if you get a chance, come to the Northern California Book Awards this coming Saturday, September 6th. It's free to the public. It's at the San Francisco Main Library, 100 Larkin. And then you can personally meet Sabrina and purchase this incredible book. Now, before you start reading a little bit from this wonderful book, please tell us what The Tears and Smiles of Thing by Sodomora is really about. Like, what led you to say this is a book I want to translate?
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, first I should tell you who is Andriy Sodomora because he's such an interesting
Yes.
character and an important character in Ukrainian literature. So, Andriy Sodomora is an 85-year-old professor of classics, so ancient Greek and Latin, and he lives in Lviv, which is the western capital of Ukraine. And in addition to being this extremely venerable, wise professor, he is the preeminent translator of classical texts into Ukrainian. So he's translated literally hundreds of pages of Greek and Latin into Ukrainian, and all the classics. So Seneca, Ovid, Sappho, all of these great authors, he has made them accessible to Ukrainian audiences. Um, and in addition to that, his third identity is as a creative writer. So he's a poet, a writer of children's books, and also he writes these very idiosyncratic and rich um, kind of genre-bending pieces, which is the material from which the Tears and Smiles of Things is composed. So these, we call it the Tears and Smiles of Things, stories, sketches, and meditations. And the pieces in this collection are not one or the other of those things. They're kind of all of those things together. So they're very personal sort of reflections on his life, on aging, on childhood, on memory, on the places where he lives. They're kind of sketches, vignettes of daily life that really give you a strong sense of Ukraine, his country. Um, and then there are also stories. I mean, they're kind of plotted, um, sometimes suspenseful, but on a very small scale. So each piece is only a couple of pages long. Um, so as I was telling Kim before, this was actually brought together from two collections, The Tears of Things and The Smiles of Things. The Tears of Things really centers on this cosmopolitan city of Lviv, where Sodomora is currently located. And then the Smiles of Things center on a lot of his memories from childhood in the rural village of Vydiv. Um, and these pieces, I would say in general, they explore the relationship between transient human life and enduring objects, places, and culture. So in one story, The Garden, the narrator reflects on a once beautiful, vibrant orchard that was destroyed by German tanks in his childhood. Um, a visceral reminder of how beauty and heritage can be erased by war. So that's, of
Yeah.
course, relevant to the current situation in Ukraine. Another story, A Jug of Wild Strawberries, which maybe I'll read from later, captures the sensory richness of rural summers in Ukraine, evoking youth and the inevitability of change, and all this through like really deep uh, evocation of senses. So there's a lot of like synesthesia in the book, especially like smells, I think are very prevalent. And then in the credenza, which I also want to read from, a household object, a piece of furniture becomes this repository for familial stories and kind of ties the material world of like furniture to emotional and historical themes. Um, and in terms of just the story of how this translation came about. So basically, it came about through a friendship. So my co-translator, Roman Ivashkiv, is somebody I met at the University of Illinois probably a decade ago. And we bonded over our love of translation, passion for translation. I was a librarian at the time. He was a teacher. He was teaching Russian and Ukrainian there. And we started working on some little projects together. And then about probably 5 years ago, he called me up and said, I have this project. This is a project I've been wanting to do. Um, he said, if I only do this one translation in my whole life, I'll be happy. And I said, okay, I will help you with it. And I think, initially I approached it with some skepticism because I'm somebody who likes my fiction to be very, very pleasurable and not loaded down with academic themes. And I think I had some fear that because Sodomora is also a scholar, there would be a lot of kind of learning integrated into the book. And there is absolutely, but I would say in general, the whole tone of the book is so light and approachable that everything comes together really, really beautifully and effortlessly.
Would you like to read something from
Yes.
the book now?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to read from a story called The Credenza. And this is a story I've been thinking about a lot because actually I'm helping my dad move out of um, his home that he's lived in for 40 years right now. And when you're doing that, it's so relatable, I think. I've been thinking about this story a lot because when you're going through all your possessions, it just dredges up so many memories. And even though you tell yourself, these are just objects, um, they're lifeless, they do contain all this life that you've um,
Yes.
put into them. So anyway, here's the credenza. It stood in the living room overlooking the garden through one window, in the courtyard through another, by the wall in a corner where the sun's rays did not reach. It was itself the color of sunshine, and that corner always seemed warm and cozy. The lower, more massive part of the credenza had two cabinet doors. Bulkier serving dishes like dinner sets were kept there. Large platters, soup tureens, and salad bowls, fruit platters, ceramic jugs, compote pitchers, oblong sauce boats. Where we're from, sauce is pronounced in the French way, sauce. Round cake stands with feet and other, mostly porcelain stuff. Above them, in two drawers, were silver spoons, forks, knives, spatulas for serving slices of cake, and togs for grabbing them, a corkscrew. Father Smalling would ask in German for the wie the whatchamacallit, and other similar things. On the silverware, in an ornately engraved monogram, one could make out the initials of our great-grandmother, Yevgenia Korushinska. The upper section of the credenza was smaller. It too had little drawers, but with glass panes. The more delicate sets resided there, porcelain and glazed ceramic saucers and demi-tasses for coffee and tea, wine goblets, a miniature carafe with a set of teensy bulb-shaped liqueur glasses, a small faceted cruet for vinegar, a sugar bowl, a salt bowl with little silver spoons, and so on. The upper part was only half as wide as the often marble surface of the lower one, so there was room for a dish of dry pastries, usually ammonia cookies, and various fruits when they were in season, grapes, trushachkas, strawberries, apples, plums, and other things from the garden. Go grab it from the credenza. It's there in the bottom of the credenza, or it's there on the top of the credenza, I hear my mother saying. But for me, above all, the credenza meant coziness, my own little space where no one ever looked. I was privy to that coziness because the credenza did not stand flush against the wall, but rather fenced off a corner of the room, creating a small triangular nook behind it. A little cubby hole within the room. As a schoolboy, I would squeeze back there, cover the floor with a coarse woolen blanket, nestle in comfortably, and get to reading. This was most pleasurable when it was raining outside the window, or better yet, sleeting. But in the corner, it was cozy. That feeling couldn't be created by any old screen, partition, or odd piece of furniture, only by that credenza. Back then, it never occurred to me that the Italian word credenza contains the dignified Latin verb credo. I believe, I trust, I rely upon. I didn't know that verb, and yet I felt protected, calm, and content behind the credenza's shoulders. I trusted it. So sweet was the rain's whisper, and all the sweeter when it was prolonged and monotone.
Beautiful. I'm curious. Did you ever have the pleasure of having a conversation or sending any notes back to him, back and forth to Sodomora about his work?
So actually, yeah, it's interesting. We really did not. So I especially did not. Um, Sodomora, as I said, is 85 years old. He doesn't really use email. And Rahman would sometimes we would have questions. This is a
Right.
very dense text, and sometimes we would have questions about what Sodomora intended, and we would go through a colleague of Sodomora's, whose name is Markian, and he wrote the introduction to this book, actually. So he would sort of relay our questions to Sodomora, and we would go back and forth that way.
Wow. Did you get it after the book was completed? Were there any comments that he might have sent letting you know how he felt about it?
I know that he was very happy about the
Excellent.
translation. I don't think that he
Excellent.
read it
You
because
don't?
I don't think that, yeah, I don't think he speaks English. So,
Right. Right.
but I
You,
know that he was happy that it occurred. And, we were since, he is getting up there in age, we were very
yes.
happy that we were able to get it published when we did.
I am also because it brings it to a wider audience. And when you read that, particularly the part where he climbed into the credenza, and then the word cradle,
Mhm.
he was being surrounded by his memories. It
Yes.
was something very poetic and that part of the story. And so I like that very much so. Um, what drew you to the work of Sotomora? Because he is a very towering figure in Ukrainian literature. And this
Mhm.
is and this is the first time he's ever actually been translated into English.
Yeah, definitely. I think looking back, a part of it was the fact that, Roman and I are both translators. We're passionate about, this kind of strange activity of translation. And Sodomora is at base also a translator himself. So I think he has a lot of the same obsessions that we do with language and sort of translating culture along with language, like how do you
Yes.
get across not only the words, but the whole kind of feeling of a place. And this book is just so suffused with atmosphere and place, I think, as a result of that. And for Ramon and I think we were drawn to different aspects of his writing. So for Ramon, it was the really like he really got off on like all the literary allusions, so
Mhm.
all of these allusions to Horace and Seneca, and also European literature like
Yeah.
Garcia Lorca, and
Wow.
he's just such a smart guy, such a like intellectual giant, you know. So I think Rahman felt very honored to be able to kind of communicate his work to a larger audience. For me, what I was really drawn to was this sort of like nitty-gritty of the book, like this texture of a place that he communicates so beautifully through. I think in the credenza, you have these kind of lists of objects,
Yes.
and they're so like all of them together, they're so beautifully like kind of parceled out, and there's a sort of humor to all of it because it communicates at the same time, all these objects that are so kind of insignificant seeming and forgotten, but also um, filled with memories and
Yes.
culture. And I think because he is drawn to these lists for somebody who's not from Ukraine, as I am not from Ukraine, it communicates a lot about the place.
I love that because it reminded me of childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my mother was from the South, and her mother could cook anything. And so when you brought those out, it was the type of things that my mom would have used. And
Yeah.
so it was very beautiful. Was there any passage in the book that just brought up a lot of emotions or memories or feelings that you really felt very strongly about?
Oh yeah, there are so many. I mean, I think this one, just like when I was reading it now, I got kind of emotional because, as I said, we've been going through my childhood home,
Yes.
and part of that was, getting rid of almost everything. And like my parents' generation and their parents' generation, they kept so many things and they
Yeah.
really valued possessions, whereas I think my generation, we just get rid of everything and get new
It's
stuff.
different.
Yeah, it's so
Then
different.
in their generation and even mine, uh, we didn't start out with computers.
Yeah.
And so people kept notes or
Yeah.
kept diaries. And
Photos, like so many boxes of photos and
exactly. And you're like, who is that person over there? I know them. That's granddad, you know? So
yeah.
it changes things. Although you were not born in the Ukraine, you actually have a history there because you're I'm just curious, when you went to the Ukraine for the first time, what did you feel? What was there something that struck out for you that, oh my God, this is a part of the world that some of my family is from. What what
hmm
what came through for you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. My family is not from Ukraine specifically, but I do so part of my family is from Hungary and then part of my
Oh,
family is
okay.
from like Russia and
Wow.
Belarus and but Russian Empire, like same kind of area and Germany also, But yeah, basically, I studied Russian in college, and then I ended up living in St. Petersburg in Russia for a year. And then after I graduated, I went to Ukraine and lived there for a year. And yeah, I did have a like very strong feeling of affinity toward those places, the former Soviet Union. Like there was just something about the mentality, like it's just a deeply thoughtful, intellectual, bookish
Right.
culture. So for somebody like me, it was great, just to be able to meet people and talk about books.
Uh, uh,
Um,
you went to so many places that were a part of the former Soviet Union. Was there any place particular or any like area that you looked at and there was a sense of nostalgia or home visiting? Was there any particular place?
um,
St. Petersburg, perhaps?
Definitely, yeah, gorgeous
Yeah.
city. I mean, yeah, I felt so at home
Beautiful.
there, and it was one of the first places I went, by myself. Like one of the first places I visited abroad by myself. So it was really meaningful for
You
me for
know,
that reason.
I just think that is incredible and also very brave to go off to a whole nother part of the world. Just beautiful. Now, you have done so much with regard to translation. What draws you to something to want to translate it? What types of things or words or what do you see in a
Hmm.
book that you say, okay, I want to work with this book? Is there something that stands out particularly?
Yeah, I guess my fundamental instinct is to sort of fill gaps and to find things that are overlooked or just that people have no exposure to at all, which there's so many things, you know. Like it frustrated me that, there have been, you know, 8 different translations of every novel by Dostoevsky, and yet there are so many
Yes.
works that have never been translated and whole languages that have never been translated. So that has really guided me towards some of these smaller literatures and languages and just doing my best, even though I'm not a native speaker of these languages, but sort of struggling through them and learning them enough to be able to translate some of their
But it's
authors.
I think it's the caring. I think it's the part of you that is very obvious that actually cares about the writing and about the people and about the culture. And I can even, when we're talking, I can feel that the love of the work, it just comes out so strongly.
Absolutely.
And
No, I'm very proud of this book, this translation, and this probably took a couple years. Even though it's a small book, it took a couple years, but it was worth every minute.
oh, it's that is very obvious. Is there something else you'd like to read in the book?
Um, yeah, I thought I would read a story that's called um, The Wild Strawberry. Oh, A Jug of Wild Strawberries. I thought I would read this one because it's a really
I like
beautiful
the title.
story. Yeah, it's a beautiful story about the end of summer, which is
Oh,
obviously upon us right now.
yes.
So this is from the Smiles of Things. So this is one of his, actually the credenza was also from the Smiles of Things, but this is one of his stories again about childhood and sort of rural Western Ukraine. A jug of wild strawberries. An elderly woman brought them to my mother once a year at the height of summer. A jug of freshly picked wild strawberries. She came from a village about 7 kilometers away, a village with the ancient name Tadani, so strange it can hardly be connected with anything. The woods near there have the same name, Tadani. The jug was filled to the brim with strawberries, covered with fern fronds and tied around the neck with long pieces of grass. As soon as the woman removed the ferns, the room was overtaken by the smell of strawberries. No words can describe that smell. They only add distance rather than bringing us closer to the incomparable aroma of freshly plucked wild strawberries. In it are the mysteries of nature, the forest, the earth's depths, its life-giving water, without which no plant can rise toward the sun. In the forest, this scent mingles and blurs with many others. Together they create the fragrance of the forest. But nestled together in the closeness of the jug, those wild strawberries smelled only of themselves. They smelled as they once did in dizzying prehistory, when there was no man to inhale their fragrance, when the ferns were colossal, when dinosaurs trampled the grasses. They were fragrant for their own sake, for their own pleasure. And yet you could describe the smell as subtle or delicate, like the dainty, low-hanging and downcast berries themselves, sheltering from the scorching sun beneath a canopy of green leaves. Their aroma, taste, and appearance are the epitome of tenderness and chastity. And speaking of taste, they should only be paired with the barely thickened, not yet sour cream. That's how I used to enjoy those strawberries. The woman would get ready to leave as my mother showered her with various goods, saying she hoped to bring us another full jug of wild Tidani strawberries next summer. But one summer, I no longer remember when, the woman with the wild strawberries didn't come, and then she never came again.
That's absolutely beautiful. It reminds me to a certain extent of almost poetry. There's a
Absolutely.
poetic quality to it.
I
You
think
know,
so.
I want to thank you for just taking the time to talk about your work. And I want to tell our audience, please come to the Northern California Book Awards on Saturday, this Saturday, September 6th, so you can meet brilliant authors like Sabrina Jaszi. And thank you once again. And once again, it's a free event this Saturday at 2 p.m. And just have a wonderful day. Perhaps have some strawberries. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.